Welcome back. According to a new report, Arizona has lost out on billions of dollars in education funding due to mismanagement of its state trust land. Now, that claim is that valuable land is going unused. And the claim is that if Arizona sold the remaining land in the state land trust over the next 10 years, that could generate $18.5 billion in revenue and $55 billion in economic activity. Lorenzo Romero is a specialist on the Arizona Education and Economic Development for the Common Sense Institute. Lorenzo, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here, John. Thank you.
Can you give us a quick thumbnail of what the State Land Trust is?
Yes, absolutely, John. So the State Land Trust comprises about 8 million acres of land here in the state of Arizona. And the story of the land trust goes back to statehood. So Arizona became the 48th state in 1912. As part of our arrangement in becoming a state in the Union, we were given 9 million acres of land for the benefit of K-12 education. And over 100 years, we've sold only 1 million acres of that 9 million. So today we have 8 million acres of land that's available that could be sold, but it has to be sold under a very strict standard, which is the highest and best use standard. The takeaway here, John, is we're given 9 million acres. We've only sold 1 million in 100 years, and we need to be more aggressive in selling land and getting proceeds back for the benefit of K-12 education.
So the Common Sense Institute took a look at this, and you kind of crunched the numbers, and the bottom line is you think that we're leaving money on the table that could fund education.
Absolutely. And so the way we looked at this at the Common Sense Institute, obviously not all 8 million acres of that land is going to be sold, either in year 1, year 2, year 3, because you're thinking about land that's in proximity to a lake or a mountainside. So about 1/3 of that acreage is within 5 to 10 miles of population centers and cities and towns, and we believe that has great value. Now, today, we probably cannot sell that land because of this standard that I just mentioned to you, the highest and best use standard. Arizona and New Mexico are the only states that have this standard, and it's so high that essentially you have to sell land at or above appraised value. And typically transactions don't happen at that level. But a transaction may be at 95 cents on appraised value, 95% of appraised value, could be sold and could be sold rapidly. So that is the opportunity here. We need to move away from being a state that just banks land for many, many years and be a state that can truly manage the assets for the benefit of K-12 education.
Lorenzo, for that to happen, the legislature would have to get involved. Voters would probably have to vote on it because doesn't Prop 123 passed in 2016, that expired in June of this year. So they're going to get involved anyway. What about Congress? Does Congress have to have input?
Yeah, so let's do some history here on Prop 123. So Prop 123 was passed around 2016 when Governor Ducey was governor. It was his effort to get more money back into the classroom and also to solve a long-standing inflation lawsuit. He was successful in rallying the state to pass that. Prop 123, essentially what it did is it put in about $300 million more new dollars into K-12 education per year up until this past year. Now that money expired, and that money was funded from the Land Trust Endowment Fund. And what this legislature did is they had made a decision that if that money expired, it would be shifted to the general fund. So the expiration of Prop 123 is no cut to K-12 education because it's funded by the general fund. However, policymakers as well as the governor within the last year has reported they want to extend distributions from this fund to further fund K-12 education. And under that scenario, we would have to go get permission from the voters, but we would not have to get permission from Congress in this situation.
Okay. The State Land Trust, in its formation, which is federal land given over to a state, Arizona, in 12. Thank you. It was designed to help fund education, right? That's part of its use.
Absolutely. That 8 million acres of land that I mentioned is 100% dedicated to funding K-12 education. And John, this is something that just a story that needs to be told. We have this sleeping giant of an asset that we have to awaken. and fund education from this asset. And so what the Common Sense Institute is saying is, if we can sell those lands and then put them into an endowment that earns 7 to 8% interest, which has been the long-term rate of return on these assets, then that could be a new funding stream, a powerful funding stream for K-12 education. And John, we need that here in Arizona. It doesn't matter what study you look at. They always show per pupil funding, we're towards the bottom end of per pupil funding. This is something we can do that can increase per pupil funding, that can increase teacher pay, that can create more housing starts in the state of Arizona, create more economic development opportunities, that can take us back to a top 5 state in job growth and economic development activity.
Lorenzo, you were the state budget director under Governor Ducey, so you know the numbers. I'm just wondering if somebody at home is watching this saying, you know, and they may not know, we spend half of the state budget on education, half. That is a lot of money, okay? And people are looking at our education system and they're saying, I don't think it's all that great. And so I know what you're saying, but I'm wondering if, you know, there are people who are going to say, man, we keep throwing money at education, and we're not getting a product that people are really, really enthusiastic about.
Yeah. And John, I would say that's absolutely true. And that's why I think in the state of Arizona, we have the benefit of school choice, and parents vote with their feet. So there's a couple factors that go into this. One is the school choice factor, in that higher performing, well-established schools are going to get more students to attend their schools. And the ones that aren't doing so well, those need to be reformed. So reform is part of the discussion. But teacher pay is so pivotal. Someone coming to our state earning approximately $45,000 is going to find it difficult to find housing. It's going to find it difficult to get to get a car and to commute to where they need to work. These are naturally difficult constraints that are placed on these teachers, and there's 2 parts to this equation. One is performance, but another one is we need to have a standard of pay that makes sense for teachers, and we're not there yet.
Yeah, and I think there's wide agreement on that. I think people are okay spending the money if they think it's going to teachers to better the education of the kids more than football stadiums or more physical plant at a time when enrollment, as you know, is declining in Arizona.
Absolutely. And so I think first and foremost, I think teacher pay is very important. I think enrollment is declining in places where the performance is not there. So I'm also president of Basis Educational Ventures. We are the company that manages the Basis charter schools across the country. We are the #1 school in the United States. Our enrollment's not declining. In Arizona, our enrollment is flat and we're not growing. And I'll tell you why. A big reason is teachers. So we have the performance. We have great teachers. We need to continue to have teachers come into our system. Teacher pay needs to be prioritized to achieve that.
Okay, so Lorenzo, on Prop 123, trying to extend it, it ended, as I mentioned, you know, in the spring of this year. What's going to happen moving forward with trying to keep Prop 123, because that's a pretty good chunk of money, $300 million in annual funding to K through 12 education.
That's right, John. So as I said, even the expiration of Prop 123, that money is still being funded. But it's being funded now by the general fund. And so depending on who you ask this question, everyone's going to have a different answer. So the governor about a year ago came out with a plan where she wanted to continue to fund new Prop 123 dollars and do that out of this permanent endowment land trust fund, which is managed by the state treasurer. And that would be about $300 or $400 million. Now, the legislature has another plan where they want to increase teacher pay about $10,000 per teacher, and that the funding for that would also come from this endowment trust fund. And then there's other legislators and policymakers that want to do something more on teacher pay, but they also want other types of reforms. So I think there's about 3 competing issues on Prop 123. At the start of the legislative session, my hope is we can actually get a definitive one, at least moving at the legislature, and then we'll see what the governor wants to do. There's been talks that she's going to run an initiative that hasn't yet kicked off, but it's just going to be a wait and see situation.
Lorenzo, do you believe that if we raised teacher pay significantly in this state, we could really get education here rolling? Is that the big roadblock of everything out there?
It's a major roadblock, John, and this is the way I look at it. If you want talented teachers, well, you have to pay up for that talent. It's just about incentives. And so I think if we drastically improve teacher pay and we also reward performance of schools, then those combination factors together, I think we're going to move the needle big time in the state of Arizona.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been an issue ever since I've been here, and I appreciate you coming on the program to talk about it. Lorenzo Romero, specialist on Arizona education and economic development for the Common Sense Institute and the former state budget director. Lorenzo, good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you.
We'll see you soon. Thanks.